Meeting, April 8th, 2021. Um, Mr. Gibbs, do you have our disclosure?
Good evening, everyone. Pursuant to the governor's emergency declaration, this meeting is being held via Zoom. As such, the meeting is being recorded. You are consenting to being recorded by participating in the meeting. There is no expectation of privacy by participating in the meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We will ask our esteemed mayor to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Certainly. Let's pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Madam Secretary, can we please proceed with roll call, beginning with our esteemed mayor?
Mayor Hipkins,
Present.
President Monroe,
Present.
Vice President Francis,
Present.
Councilor Johnson, Councilor Johnson,
She's present.
okay, Councilor Cave,
Hi, everybody, I'm here.
Councilor McCabe,
Dr. McCabe is present.
oh, I saw her. Councilor Jones Waters,
Present.
Councilor Rocloud,
Here.
Solicitor Gibbs,
Present.
Ms. James,
Present.
Ms. Mulvana,
Here.
Mr. Nichols,
Present.
that concludes roll call.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbs, would you like to explain how we'll conduct our citizens forum?
Yes, good evening, everyone, again in the public. This is an opportunity for public comment. As such, that we're via Zoom, we'd ask that you raise your hand in the chat box or make a comment and we will recognize you in turn. Once you're recognized, please identify yourself, give your address, and recognize that pursuant to the rules of council, there are 3 minutes allocated for each person. If anyone wants to do public comment, please raise your hand. Ms. Beatty Footman. I'm going to, Ms. Beatty's first. May I go with her first, ma'am?
Thank you.
Ms. Beatty, you have to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, my name is Nicole Beatty. I live on 110 East Providence Road here in Yaden. And I have a public comment regarding the intersection of Union and Lincoln Avenue. And there needs to be more of a presence. There used to be a police officer parked in that vicinity, sometimes in the Nile Swim Club parking lot. But there seems to be a lot of running of the stop signs at that intersection. People just seem to be zipping through. Also at the intersection of Providence and Wycombe, which is the corner of my street where Zesty's Pizza Shop is, there seems to be a lot of running of stop signs. And what I would like to see take place is more of a police presence, monitoring traffic, as it were, not too long ago. It seems like that seems to be lacking. So that is my comment for this evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Chief could address that in his report.
Next is Lauren Footman. Ms. Footman, can you unmute yourself?
Hello. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Thank you. So I have a couple of,
State your name and your address, ma'am.
yes, Lauren Footman, 854 Rundell Avenue.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. My question is with respect to the chicken coop that is on Church Lane. I did report it to the code department, and did share my concerns as it relates to potential public health implications for the borough and the county, and wanted to know if there is any immediate remedy for that. That was my first comment. So don't know if that will come up in Mr. Stokes's report. And then my other comment was the recent article that was placed in the borough newspaper from the code department that I found to be highly inappropriate as it relates to, I guess, the role of the citizen interacting with the code department, as it said that we should expect to not always get resolved, and we should take it upon ourselves as residents to remedy code issues and blame the local judge for the reason that code had not been enforced, et cetera, et cetera. I won't read each highlighted point, but just thought that that was not reflective of the community that we say that we're building, and we should not position residents as they're complaining, particularly when people are out of compliance with code. And so I just wanted to bring that to the attention because I felt that it cast a bad light, not only on borough staff, but also on borough council as they work at the pleasure of the council.
Madam President, you want me to address the chicken coop?
Thank you.
The chicken coop was brought to my attention this week. I'm conducting legal research about it. Currently, we have no ordinances that govern chicken coops. There are some state laws, agricultural laws related to the non-commercial keeping of wild animals. Sorry, non-commercial keeping of bees, chicken, and goats. Because the legislature has passed these state laws, they are rather broad, and I want to make sure that those laws don't apply to our borough. Assuming they don't, the borough will be in a position to pass an ordinance if the council so desires to regulate the keeping of animals. But we live in a very rural agricultural state, and they have passed a number of laws that allow for non-commercial keeping of animals. Borough, as a subdivision of the Commonwealth, can't make a prohibition greater than the state law, or make a prohibition that's stronger than the state law, but we can do things beneath it. I understand that there may be some talk that the borough has an ordinance. I haven't found one that addresses specifically the keeping of chickens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Just wanted to confirm, will my comment about the letter that was put in by the code director be addressed at another time, or is this not the forum for that to be addressed?
I'm not sure exactly what you would like to be addressed. I'm not sure that everyone is aware of the letter, but I'm going to ask Mr. Nichols to get us a copy of it, and we'll respond in writing.
Thank you.
So if I could speak with respect to that article that was placed in the Yale newspaper, it was insulting. It was very insulting. And it's my understanding that before these articles are placed, they're reviewed and they're approved, and then they're printed. So I'm a little confused as to how someone reviewed this specific article, then approved it, and actually put it in print, especially when the article says, and I quote, "If the code enforcement fails to address a problem, and that will happen, your neighborhood or community organization should meet face-to-face with the property owners themselves," unquote. So now we're asking the citizens to resolve the problems of codes that are being violated. And that's the job of the code department officers. So for something like that to go into a paper that tax dollars fund, is deplorable. It should never have happened. Someone dropped the ball somewhere and let it go. So I'm not going to sit here and act like this was a mistake. This was just something that someone found to be very amusing and poor taste. We're talking about economic development, bringing in businesses, but our code department is saying, be nice to us. You'll get more done if you're nice to them. You're telling us if you can't have it, I'm sorry, I'm still talking. You're telling the residents, if you have a problem with your neighbor who's violating the code, don't bother us with the complaints because we might not address it. And when we decide not to address it, then you address it. So now we're pinning citizens against citizens.
Councilor Roadcloud.
This was a disgrace, period.
Thank you. Councilor Roadcloud, I'm going to ask that we do have a discussion about this in a different forum. Your interpretation and your reading of the article is not, it's not factual. When Ms. Footman,
quotes out of the
excuse me,
article. No, I read quotes out of the article. I read quotes out of the article.
Counselor, you're out of order.
Bye.
Madam President, Ms. Tamika Keys would like to be recognized. I'm sorry for not, I don't want to butcher your first name. May I recognize that person?
So I'm going to finish my statement and then we can recognize Ms. Keys. So with respect to the article, interpretation is up to the individual who's reading it. We are also, when it was just presented to us, it was a note that was put in the door. It was not referenced that it was in our newsletter. Now that that has been clarified, we will take a closer look at the newsletter. Thank you. Mr. Gibbs, please recognize Ms. Keys.
Ms. Keys, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Timmy Tope Keys, and I live at 1126 Duncan Avenue. And my question was actually around and builds on Ms. Beatty's comment with regard to the speeding issues, the traffic violations. I understand from the last Public Safety Committee meeting that we are now down 2 part-time officers. So my question is to Chief Paparo with regard to what's the plan of action there in terms of filling those roles, and what is the timeline that we can anticipate we have people here helping us out.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask that Chief Paparo address that in his report. We will next move on to our mayor's report.
Thank you, Madam President. My report stands as submitted. I don't have anything to add. I believe the only thing I wanted to underscore is the stimulus funding that Yaden received in the tune of $1.14 million. That will help offset some of our costs and overages with COVID. And part of that was police overtime and part-timers, but I'll let the chief and the borough manager address that in their respective reports. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Would you like to give an update on the Wellness Center, or do you want me to take that? We were both on the call.
Why don't you address that in your report?
All right, thank you. So it's my report that's next. And I did want to make sure that we reported that there were several hundred Yaden residents that we were able to get vaccinated during our Yaden days at the Wellness Center. Since then, the state of Pennsylvania has opened up vaccinations to other categories of people. By April 19th, everyone will be eligible for vaccination, so we will no longer need to to have these specific days. We were also told that because the vaccines will be more readily available at pharmacies and in many other locations, that they're going to have to shift their program to a more robust scheduling system that will allow self-scheduling from the individual. We will continue to assist our senior community who may not have access to the internet with getting the word out and helping them register where appropriate. So that is a big win for us. I really want to emphasize how hard that, the mayor himself worked to make sure that these calls took place and that Yaden was not overlooked. Considering we had, in early reports, we had a disproportionate number of cases being reported in Yaden due to the long-term care facilities that are within our community. But, this has really helped mitigate that situation and demonstrated a partnership with the county unlike any other. Lastly, I do want to make mention of the money that we are receiving as a part of the CARES Act. I know I've received calls from a number of individuals with suggestions on how these funds should or could be allocated, but I want to remind the public as well as the rest of our council that a lot of this money is reimbursements. So it's not something that it will, is additional. A lot of this is going to offset the costs that we've already expended to attack this COVID issue, to, on additional like masks and gloves and things of that nature, all of our different expenditures that we've had, our increased police presence, and also cover some of the costs related to the civil unrest over the summer, as well as COVID. So this isn't just a boost in our bank account. A lot of this is reimbursements. So there ends my report. I will move on to our manager's report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In my report are some changes to it. The borough has been awarded the $30,000 grant from the NFC, which is the National Fitness Campaign, to participate in the 2021 National Fitness Campaign. The next step will be to fundraise to help support this project. The goal is to raise $100,000 to $150,000 towards this project. We had a meeting with them today as a first step. We also have a meeting early next week to continue with this process. By we, I mean management and NDI. Borough management attended the monthly meeting with NDI on April 1st to discuss the borough's projects. With the assistance of NDI, management submitted the PA Department of Community and Economic Development grant application under Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program. Further updates on other matters will be provided during the engineer's report. The newsletter has gone out in the mail and is on the borough website. If you do not receive a copy, please let us know. View it from the website and/or pick up one from the borough hall. The borough has been assisting the county with scheduling COVID-19 vaccinations. At this time, the website is available for scheduling where people can schedule their vaccination appointment on their own. That website is delcopa.gov/covid/vaccinations.html#schedule. This has been put on the borough website. Anyone who's homebound or doesn't have access to the internet may still call the county call center at 484-276-2100, and they will be able to assist you with scheduling. When we were on the call with the county, Dr. O'Mahony had mentioned that everyone should still double mask, vaccinate, and remain 6 feet apart from one another due to the variant and there being an uptick. She also mentioned that events should be outside and smaller best. Newsletter articles will be due Friday, April 23rd. The county informed management and the tax collector that 508 Orchard Avenue was sold. Please continue to check the borough resources for updates on testing sites and other information. Items to be addressed On March 24th, it was determined that the roof was leaking and the water dripped into the code department. This matter is being assessed by NDI and further details will be provided in that report. Management met with the owners of the lot at the end of 2nd Street between the railroad and Forest Creek Apartments. They wanted to know if the borough had any interest in the land or any ideas for it. They mentioned that over the years, the property was considered for twin homes, senior living homes, and apartments. The Delaware County Office of Behavioral Health is requesting that the borough declare May 2nd to May 8th as Children's Mental Health Awareness Week. That letter was provided in the packet. And management will continue to fill vacancies at the borough, and the borough is always accepting applications. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We will
Question
move
for the
on to
manager.
our
I have a question
our
for the manager.
solicitors.
I have a question for the manager.
Council Road Cloud.
My question, was the application for the revitalization study grant filed?
Yes, that was the one that I reported about, the Greenways Trails and Recreation Program that we did with NDI.
No.
Yes, that is what we asked for in that grant.
Yeah, that was the title of the, that's where we had to put it at under DCD. Yes, that was submitted on Friday that just passed.
This is the same revitalization study grant we discussed about a month or so ago, correct?
Yeah, economic development revitalization, yes.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
All right, thank you. Oh, quick question about the recovery, COVID recovery relief. So I was under the impression that that recovery relief was separate and apart from the reimbursement that we were applying to get. Is that a misunderstanding on my behalf?
So the borough did submit a reimbursement to FEMA. Miranda, which one was it?
They're
FEMA?
kind of in conjunction, but
They were in conjunction.
you can
So
say
we
that.
just received a status update from them where myself, Rufus as the emergency management coordinator, and the borough manager had to sign off on some things, and we had to have the solicitor review some things to let us know that the reimbursement we submitted about a year, it wasn't a year ago, maybe back in the fall, we pretty much went on to the next phase and that those funds will be dispersed to us. The dollars that come from this latest bill that the president signed, that is separate from the dollars that we put in for reimbursement for back in September, October of last year.
Okay, all right, so, okay, I didn't misunderstand. So, okay, all right. So the dollars that we just received has nothing to do with reimbursement for the expenses we had to expend.
The economic relief dollars you're talking about?
What, the 1.1 we just received, the 1.4 or the 1.1 million we just received?
No, that's separate from the FEMA dollars, yes. You can use the American Relief money to reimburse the borough for certain things related to COVID. You can do that, yes.
Okay, but you also can use it for other things as well?
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Can I, Mayor, Councilor, and Mr. Nichols, the concern is that the Department of Treasury has not released their regulations yet about how that money is allocated exactly. So the concern, one of the things that is happening is that people are holding it until those regulations are released because they haven't, Congress passed a bill, but they haven't told people how they can exactly spend it yet.
I understand that. Thank you.
And further clarification, Mr. Gibbs, just so everyone knows, the money hasn't been released yet. So we don't have the money in our possession. I don't want anyone to think that. And just another point of clarity, a call that I sat on recently related to it, the monies are dispersed to the state first, then the state disperses the money to the municipality. And you don't get it all at one time. It'll be a 50% disbursement, and 12 months from disbursement date, the borough or the municipality can draw down the other 50%.
So, and what I expect to happen, and what people are saying they expect to happen, is that because the money's going to the state first, if PEMA reimbursed you, they'll just deduct it from your allocation.
which is why I said that the monies will be used as primarily as reimbursements, and then we'll see what's left. So thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Next is our solicitor's report.
Oh, the quote unquote trashed up project in Upper Darby, he has refiled an application with the Upper Darby Zoning Board. That application is to have what he changed his project to during the hearing, which is to be a farm for dumpsters. I'm going to ask council next week for us to take a formal position opposing the application. Other surrounding municipalities have done the same. We're continuing to work on our tax assessment appeals, and we're also working on reviewing documentation and making sure that some of the projects that we have going in Yaden, including McNamee Court, everything is lined up. So I'll be working with Eileen tomorrow and next week to make sure everything is lined up. And that is all I have. Next week, also, council will be having, during our council meeting, a hearing related to a resolution for Mr. Aaron Gravely to remove him as a member of the zoning board, assuming that he doesn't respond and convince council to keep him.
It's not the zoning board, it's the
I'm
civil
sorry, it's the
service.
Civil Service Commission. Is there any questions
All right.
for me? Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our tax collector's report.
Good evening. The report for the month of March, under our borough real estate, we collected $2,381,416.20. Under the category of sewer, we collected $1,196,320. Under borough trash, we collected $907,880. A grand total was deposited in this account for $4,185,916.20. For the last few years, this is the most we've ever collected in March, and I think it's thanks to the stimulus grants. That concludes my account report.
Thank you. Ms. James actually shared with me that our deputy tax collector lost her grandmother today. Lost her grandmother earlier this week, and the services were today. We've extended our sympathies to her and have sent the family something privately. But thank you for letting us know. And please keep her family in your prayers.
Amen.
Thank you, Ms. James.
You're welcome.
We will move on to our library report. Mr. Payne.
Good evening, everyone. On March 31st, I worked with the Yaden Public Works staff to clean out the basement of the library to bring us in compliance for insurance purposes. I want to give special thanks to Mr. Wilkinson, and his team for their hard work, and Ms. Presswood for getting the ball rolling. It looks so much better. On Saturday, April 17th, from noon until 1, the Yaden Public Library will host a virtual career day. And beginning on April 26th, I'm happy to report the Yaden Public Library, in conjunction with the Delaware County Office of Services for the Aging, will be offering the Arthritis Foundation Walk with Ease program. This program will continue weekly through June 1st. I'm happy that I just found out about that partnership today, and I'm really happy to announce that. For more information about any library programs, please contact us, and we'll be glad to give you more information. Our monthly usage stats were, we checked out 1,710 items via curbside, and we distributed 250 meal packs to youth on Tuesdays, and we offered 23 programs, 184 attendees. We continue to explore ways to safely increase our services, and we're hoping to add a patio and some tables out front for even additional services that we can offer outdoors. And that concludes my report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our engineer's report.
Good evening. In addition to the report that's been provided, I'll just give you some updates on some of those items. We do have some, last month council authorized some inlet replacements and repairs, and additional locations have been identified, as well as a storm sewer replacement requirement on Providence Road. I am communicating with Nafis, and depending on how much, this is all liquid fuels, depending on what's available, we may be coming back next week with a request for increased funding to apply.
Eileen, I actually responded to your email. You're good. It's Christmas. We had the liquid fuels audit yesterday. It was a clean audit, no findings whatsoever, and we had some additional money, so you can use it for the project.
Okay, great. Then I'll bring that up to council next week just to increase the amounts and bring the storm sewer project to your attention. The elevator will be bringing up a motion next week to authorize or to recommend an award to be made for your maintenance contract. And just to describe that a little bit, we did have 3 bidders. One was disqualified because they were late, and one wanted to withdraw their bid because they said they used last year's rates, but then when they realized they would be disqualified, they asked to, they'll just hold their pricing. And the third company, which is Code Elevator, actually Jeff had worked with them in his previous life and had recommended them that we contact them to see if they wanted to put a bid. And in fact, that's actually who we would like to recommend that you make the award to. Even though Low Rise Elevator, which is now called 3-Phase Excel, has the lower price, we weren't getting a real confident feeling that the organization is prepared. They had just purchased a bunch of elevator companies. They've purchased 3, and we weren't getting the best references for the people that were there now. So because the people that were with Low Rise weren't there any longer, we're just feeling more comfortable if you were to go with Code, who got glowing references. We did provide the reference summary to you. So it is less than, their price is $2,000, which is less than the limit that you have to get quotes. We did get the quotes anyway. So that would be our recommendation next week. As far as the roof leak goes that Miranda had mentioned, there is a setting, we have a test scheduled for April 14th at 1 p.m. where they will use the fire hose to try to, trying to think of it, mimic the rain event that had the high winds with a lot of rain that created the leak, so that we can inspect and see how the leak occurred. And we're just waiting for a confirmation from the roofing company who did that work that they can attend that day. The topographic survey is starting tomorrow at the old swim club site, so the surveyor will be there. Then Garjoul is 2/3 of the way finished with the replacement on the 400 block of Holly, where they had been authorized to do 1 section of a replacement. So far, we're up to 4 laterals that will have to be replaced during that project, but that's ongoing. And I think that's it. Unless you have any questions.
I mean, there's a question in the comments section about, do you have any information on the Cobbs Creek project that's taking place along Allen Drive?
Allen Drive. Let me read that. Where did you see that? I don't see it in the chart. I mean, in the chat.
It's in a comment section. There's a Q&A section.
Oh, I don't know what, okay, I'm not, oh, I see it. Okay. Does NDI have any information on the Cobbs Creek project that's taking place along Allen Drive? No, that's not something that we're working. So I don't know. I'm not familiar with the project.
So Eileen, I wanted to comment about the 400 block of Holly that the gentlemen who have been working out there have been really, really nice. And they, you know, they clean up after themselves. They come and knock on residents' doors every morning to, you know, they let us know we can park there at night. The borough has also allowed us to park in the borough parking lot. The chief Paparo and Mr. Wilkinson came up with that idea to allow residents who are displaced to park over there. And, you know, initially when you see all of these this big machinery show up on your street, it's like, you know, and everyone gets anxious and panic, but it's been a really smooth process. I stopped in and to check out like exactly what they were doing. I said, you know, it's often that, you know, we sit in a council meeting and we take a vote on, you know, on what needs to be replaced, but to see it in action, like they are like digging an 8-foot strip out of the middle of our street and replacing things like there's a, you know, they just the marking, like they have to go around the utility lines and around the water lines. And, you know, it was really eye-opening to actually see it in progress and to see how it's going to be maintained. I guess the questions that my neighbors, of course, have asked me would be the schedule for repaving the street so it's smooth in that condition. I didn't offer any answers, but I did tell them that I would bring that question on their behalf to this meeting.
So when the work is finished, first they'll finish the main replacement and then they go back and do the laterals. So once the laterals and the main are all completed, then they will do a temporary resurfacing. And then we let that sit. So it sits for at least 90 days. If we get a lot of rain, then perhaps it will go less than 90 days, but the settlement is really important. Otherwise you'll start to see dips. If we did repave too quickly, you'll start to see dips because even though they compact, they can't get it to where it's not going to create a problem in the street if you pave too soon. So that's why we let all the streets sit, because it's a waste of your taxpayer money if we pave too quickly. So I would say the earliest that you would see it paved is September. Again, liquid fuels money will be used for that. So we have to make sure we get authorization that there's sufficient funds this year to be able to do that street as well. But that's how the process works. And as I've said before, anyone that wants to come out and see it and have it explained, and we can just show you some of the nuances that are involved in these types of projects, we're more than happy to have you come out and go over it with you.
Mm-hmm. And I guess one other question that I had, the water source, you know, of course they, you know, they said that when they needed water, we like allowed them to use our water, and they offered to pay us. You know, my husband told them it was okay. You don't, you know, you just take the water anytime you need it. But I guess on those jobs, how do they, like, is that typical? They have to knock on doors to ask for water, or is there somewhere that they can get water, or how does that work?
They are authorized to use hydrants, but they have to contact Aqua and they are invoiced for that. And also using a hydrant is, you get the water at a much higher pressure than you would at a residence. So in general, that is what they do. They knock on doors. If they bring a water truck out, we would be paying a lot more per foot of pipe replacement if we had to do it that way, but they are obligated to do it that way. If residents were to say that they won't let them use their water, then they will have to, you know, purchase it, which in turn you are purchasing.
I can't imagine them using a hydrant for like the 3 or 4 buckets of water that they've asked for. So yes, I just wanted to let you know that, you know, it's going well as far as I can see.
Right.
And it's very interesting.
They're a very nice contractor. It's a family-run business, and they happen to be a really diligent contractor. So I'm glad to hear that. I'll pass that on to them too.
Great, thank you very much.
Elaine, I have a question for you. Do you have a list of streets that require repaving as a result of work that was performed on it?
We do. I think council should actually, I don't have it with me tonight. I can probably look for it during the meeting and have it by the end of the meeting on my computer. I'm using my tablet for this because I don't have a video on my computer. But council did authorize the paving of certain streets, and they were all related to previous sewer work. So that I know Duncan, a portion of Duncan is on there, a portion of West Cobb's is there. I believe Gunther in the area of Pleasant.
So I
is
actually have it
on
in
there.
front of me if you want
Oh,
me to
you
read it
do?
off.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the milling and resurfacing the intersection of Cypress Avenue and Parmley Avenue, Duncan Avenue from 919 Duncan Avenue to Darnell, and West Cobbs Creek Parkway from Longacre Boulevard to Whitby Avenue.
And that list is actually about $100,000. And one of the primary reasons for that is that whenever you do a paving project that goes to a corner, you're obligated to put the compliant curb cut ramps in, well, handicap ramps. They are extremely expensive. So, the state actually says in their documentation, you can't stop short of an intersection just to avoid putting the ramp in. So, that takes up a lot of your money when you're doing a paving project. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Right. So now when you have contractors doing things in the street, digging in the street for whatever reason, the borough should definitely know about the work that they're doing, correct? Via
Yeah.
permits and all. So what?
Well, they don't get, wait, let me just say, they don't, the contractors that are doing the work directly for the borough do not get permits. You have contracts with each of them.
No, if a resident had a contractor, because I know there are some streets that contractors, for whatever reason, they dug the street up and it's temporary fill. It's still there and it's been there for years. So are these just streets that people forgot about, or?
So in a couple of cases over the past, I guess, 8 years, the borough did, when utilities came in, such as Aqua or Pico, they would offer to give money in lieu of actually doing the final resurfacing. And in cases where the borough knows that we have existing sewer issues there, the borough actually accepted the money to be saved for the day when we finally do that sewer. Then we'll have that money to help put towards the final resurfacing, so that we didn't have utilities doing the final resurfacing only to dig it up a short time later. So I'm not sure if there's some of the streets that you're asking about. There is a list of streets. The borough has records of which streets that money was paid in lieu of having to do the final resurfacing.
I'll send you an email.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eileen. We will move to our committee report, starting with finance.
Hey, everybody. I hope everybody's staying safe, doing well. All I have is I would love to try to schedule a committee report. I'm in a committee meeting. Ideally, maybe the first week in May. Wanted to run it by Mr. Nichols and the team and see if that works. I kind of like to have maybe like a part year check-in, as well as address possible revenue ideas.
Works for me, Councilman. I know we were doing, I think we were doing Tuesdays before, if that's still good for you, good for me.
Yeah, that first Tuesday in May.
Yep.
It works for me. Unless anybody has any other obligations, if we could schedule that, that'd be fantastic.
I'll have Ms. Ruby set it up tomorrow.
Thanks, guys. That's all I have.
Mr. Nichols, I have a couple of questions in reference to grants. I had some constituents reach out to me. One grant issue or concern was about the grant for the tree removal. That's one. And then the other one is, are there any grants available for homes that's in foreclosure?
Okay, for grants for tree removal, I don't know which one, what grant that is, Counselor. Are you We have one for tree removal? Hold on, wait. I'm pulling up my grants list now. I don't see anything on here for tree removal, but I can look into that and get back to you like ASAP tomorrow morning. And as it
Okay.
relates to homeowners that are in foreclosure, we don't, but there are some grant opportunities. The county actually has some funding opportunities, the Foundation for Delaware County for persons who are currently in foreclosure due to COVID, that the residents can most certainly apply for. That information is all on our website, and I can email it to you as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I know PHFA has some foreclosure resources as well.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Gibbs, do you see a phone number ending in 1701?
Yes.
That a participant?
Yes.
That is Counselor Rope. I'm
That
sorry,
might be,
that's Counselor Johnson?
yeah, that might be Counselor Johnson.
Yes, she was just saying that she was wishing to speak, but I didn't see her. Okay, she's here now. There you go, Counselor Johnson.
I'm in now. Thank you.
Okay, did you have something to speak on?
Well, I actually wanted to ask Eileen a question when you guys was talking about paving. And my question was, are we talking about blacktop paving or are we talking about concrete paving?
So this would all be asphalt paving.
So that would be the black. That's blacktop.
That would be the blacktop.
I'm sorry,
exactly.
blacktop. Sorry.
Yeah, I understood that. The question after that is, how often do you have to seal that blacktop and, you know, for it to actually adhere? Because it should have a sealing every so often.
It's not normally a municipal practice to seal asphalt. It's not like a driveway where they seal asphalt driveways. I'm not familiar with any seals roads.
Okay.
Maybe Counselor Johnson is referring to like the curing process after it's done.
Well, I have the blacktop in my driveway, and I was equating what Eileen was saying because I know I have to get that sealed every so often because the weeds and the other little things and it crack and that kind of a thing. So that was the nature of my question.
Right, and it's different for roads. It's a different spec that we follow.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was the question that I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. We will move on to our next committee, Ordinance and Zoning.
Mr. Nichols, would you like to take that unless Director Stokes is here? But I do have a few additions.
I know Mr. Wormley he was attending for Mr. Stokes tonight. I don't know which number is his, Mr. Gibbs.
I'm looking now. I don't see Mr. Wormley. If you could just raise your hand, sir, and we can recognize you. Does anyone know his phone number? Let me try this. Is this Mr. Wormley? If it is, sir, can you unmute yourself?
His number probably ends in 811.
Hello.
There
you hear me?
What?
Hello?
That's Mr. Wormley?
Yes. Okay. I have the Code Department report from March 2021. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right. New inspectors have been started. They've been out learning in the borough streets in the area they are assigned to. They are also learning the office procedures and documentations as that we use. Zoning, there were no zoning hearings in March. Zoning application, 1110 Duncan Avenue, rear deck approved. Hotspots, Chester Avenue, SEPTA trolley corridor, graffiti, SEPTA notified via mail from the code director and public works director. Graffiti issue throughout the borough. 700 block of Church Lane, business district, rear trash areas issue and which I'm involved with, is under monitoring. Trash uses in several apartment complexes, Washington Woods, Revere Crossing, and Parkview. Action items: Parkview Court apartment sewer issue, contractor working on this issue, Public Works and code monitoring. Tree issue: removal of trees from roadway and home of Bullock Avenue, owner working on. Removal fell the 30th of March. Monitoring, cleanup, and removal. Closed items: Grace Court Senior Center inspection, it was completed. Upcoming items: rental inspections at all apartment complexes are started. Maccabee Senior Housing contractor calling to get information on permits and permit costs. Major sewer issues: Parkview Court Apartment, monitored by Code and Public Works. To date, we've gotten $1,990.67 in abatements. And for the month of March, we've collected $48,269.27 revenues related to permits and or abatement fees and et cetera. That's the end of my report.
Thank you.
I actually have a question, Mr. Wormley. With respect to the graffiti located on the SEPTA's property, do the code department have a direct contact with SEPTA to report these issues and to have them remedied?
Yes, I believe the code director had contacted SEPTA directly.
Well, there's a specific person in SEPTA that deals with
that person. I don't know. You'd have to contact. You'd have to address that with the code director. He has people that, for instance, if there's issues with PICO, he does have names and numbers to address those particular issues. Same thing with SEPTA.
Okay, so let me ask you, and I don't know if you know, but the graffiti, for example, on SEPTA's property, is it the same process, code process, as if a resident violated that ordinance?
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
All I know is that SEPTA is notified, and they supposedly follow up with that after the fact.
Okay. Okay. My second question: motor vehicles in the common driveways that are missing wheels. Are they asked to be removed immediately because it poses a danger because it's missing wheels? Or are they simply told to just cover it up?
Well, that depends. Number one, if
Mr. Wormley, if you wouldn't mind for a second, Mr. Gibbs. We've had extensive conversations regarding.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. There was a motor vehicle that was reported, and the motor vehicle was missing wheels. You interrupted me when I was asking Mr. Wormley the process.
I asked Mr. Wormley to please refer to Mr. Gibbs.
Well, I want Mr. Gibbs to know exactly what the issue is. I want to know what the issue is. How he's going to respond if he don't know the issue?
You are out of order.
No, I'm not out of order. You're out of order. Now, if Mr. Gibbs wants to respond, it has something to do exactly with a motor vehicle.
You're out of order. Mr. Gibbs, I'd like it documented for the record that Councilor Roadcloud used an expletive before she left her screen. That is against the rules of council. As this meeting is being recorded, I'm going to ask that she be sanctioned at this point and that you control her mute button, because that's not appropriate for anyone. As I was saying to you, Mr. Gibbs, we've had extensive conversation about code's authority on private property. And I would like for you to address that so that Mr. Wormley isn't put on the spot as well, because he may not have been privy to those conversations. And even as he may have just been given a directive since he is filling in for our code director. So Mr. Gibbs, if you would, please address code's authority on private property.
it is more curtailed and limited than it would be on a public property. And I think that we do need to give people some type of notice, even if a car had, what I heard was that a car had a tire missing. And the question that I heard being posed was, is it removed immediately? My opinion as a solicitor would be it would not be moved immediately. Someone could take a tire off and go someplace. I think there does need to be a process that we evaluate what exactly is going on, because someone could be changing their tire on the Pep Boy, so it shouldn't be removed immediately. And that's the question I heard.
So if there's a long-term situation where someone has a tire off of the vehicle, I guess, Chief, would that be an emergency issue or a public hazard that would need to be remedied? Or is the fact that it's on private property make it more difficult for us to even address it at all?
It doesn't make it more difficult. We could address it. But once you go onto private property to remove something, you have to give notice. And that's always something I want to make sure that we do. Notice doesn't have to be weeks. Notice can be hours or day, but we have to give people notice before we go on private property to remove someone's property. But these are all very, very fact specific, and Rufus does a great job of calling me and walking through the specific facts on how to proceed on the issue.
Okay, so if there is an issue that someone notices where, you know, the best course of action would be to report it to the code department so that it could be addressed with the fact-specific evidence. Is that correct, Mr. Gibbs?
That is the process by which it comes to me after someone reports it to code.
Thank you. Chief Paparo, are you able to weigh in on cars that seem to pose an imminent danger, or the scenario that Councilor Roadcloud described?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a car that I recently towed from a rear alley or a rear driveway on Providence Road. The vehicle was missing tires and the front end. The vehicle was towed because it was actually blocking another resident's garage. So if it's a physical hazard or what's referred to as an attractive nuisance, something that could be place children to play on that would cause them to be endangered, for example, or blocking somebody's driveway, they need to get in or out of their home, we can tow it for safety violations and or blocking someone's driveway. On private property, if it's blocking their driveway, for instance, like on a long extended driveway going into their home on, say, like Lincoln Avenue or something like that, the resident themselves can have it removed. If it's on their property, they can call a tow truck and have it removed themselves if it's someone else's vehicle. But there are different means, and I concur with Mr. Gibbs. Normally what we do, if we find like a vehicle that's, for instance, up against a house, we'll notify the resident that they have to remove it that day, and we usually give them a couple hours to get it out of there. If they don't, if it's creating a fire hazard that can endanger someone in the residence or another residence, then we tow it.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chief. And
Councilor Roadcloud, I'm going to ask that
it has front end damage, it's leaking oil, it's leaking liquids out of the front, and it's missing the wheel.
Mr. Gibbs. Councilor Roadcloud. Councilor Roadcloud, I'm going to ask that you follow the rules of council that we've all voted on. And in the event that you have something to add to the conversation, I would like for you to wait to be recognized. And the rules of council should be followed. Councilor Roadcloud, is there something that you'd like to add?
Liana Monroe, it's Liana Roadcloud. I ask that you follow the rules as well.
Okay, Mr. Gibbs, can you please keep Councilor Roadcloud muted as she refuses to follow the rules of council that we all voted on. Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Wormley, for your report. We will move on to Public Works with Councilor Johnson.
I think Mr. Wilkerson is there and he has the report in front of him. Mr. Wilkerson.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So in the month of March, we did some tree work along Church Lane. That was completed. Work included pruning low-lying branches, diseased and damaged branches, and pruning branches away from the businesses along the 700 block of Church Lane. Next winter, we'll perform a hard winter rejuvenation prune on all trees along Church Lane to promote new and healthier growth and to also establish shape. Spring cleanup at all borough plots have begun. This includes, getting the weeds out of the beds, edging, lingering cutbacks, and pruning as well. We put the basketball hoops up back at Community Park. And the 700 block of Church Lane electrical bollards that produce light for pedestrians walking that area have been repaired and are fully functional. At the borough facilities, all ceiling tile replacements have been made in the Borough Hall. We painted the second floor lobby outside of the auditorium. This includes the walls, ceilings, doors, and trim. We assisted the fire department in removing and installing the new air compressor. We cleaned out the basement of the library, as Mr. Clay Payne talked about earlier. We took out old belongings and electronics. The street sweeper is out and about. Year to date, we're at 37.63 tons of street dirt collected. Line serviced for sanitary sewer, 431 Holly Road, as well as West Cobbs Creek from Longacre to Parmley. The Rockland and Moore manhole replacement has been completed by Garjoul. And as Eileen mentioned, sanitary sewer work on the 400 block of Holly is underway. Under highway maintenance, let's see here. We replaced and repaired broken and faded signs around town. Potholes, we're repairing them as they pop up. We ask residents, if they see a pothole, please report it as soon as possible to the Public Works Department at 610-623-3636. Storm inlets are being cleared of all leaf debris prior to any rain events to assure stormwater runoff system is operating as designed. Graffiti is being removed from poles, signs, etc. as it arises. Once again, we ask residents, if they see something, please report it to the Public Works Department. Street lights and traffic lights are being serviced and fixed as problem arises. Monthly routine inspections on all parking meters was performed. Monthly inspections on the entire fleet of borough vehicles was also completed. Upcoming projects this month in April. So we're going to be putting some more wood chips, roughly 100 yards of wood chips at the community park. This will go underneath the tot lot, the fitness area, and the playgrounds. Next week, we'll be mulching all the borough plots locations as needed, and overhead traffic light signs have been hung. So next time you guys go through a major intersection like Church and Valley, take a peek up at the new signs we just installed. Cleaning due to COVID-19 procedures, we kind of increased our cleaning every Tuesday. As mentioned before, the library gets deep disinfected with the electrostatic sprayer, and every Wednesday the Borough Hall is done. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Jeff. I just want to piggyback on just one thing that he said. As I travel around here in the borough, and he's speaking about the signs that Highway is putting up, I actually got a chance to see the work being done right at Church Lane and Bailey. And today I saw the guys working at Church Lane and West Cobbs Creek Parkway, I believe it is. They're doing a fantastic job. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Madam President, may I say something to Jeff? Is that all right?
Yes, thank you.
Jeff, I was just wondering if you had seen any reports about the them having made a mistake about COVID, and that we don't have to worry about surfaces the way that we did originally. I heard the tail end of a report about that.
So I have not heard any reports along that line. So, you
might want to Google. You might want to Google it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely will look into that, but it's one of those things. Rather be safe than sorry.
Right.
I would too, but I do think we should know what we're doing.
Dr. McCabe, I have seen the report that you were talking about that talks about contact surface transmission being very minimal, and that person-to-person transmission is really how this is happening. So it's the masking that they're recommending, not necessarily, and the issue becomes if you have biological materials on your hands that, and then like touch your eyes and stuff, those are the things. But yes, I have also read reports. I'm on a panel with CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and for their mitigation efforts for the young people. And they have issued several reports about contact surface transmission being the least hazardous. But thank you for that. And you, Jeff, I'll send you some information as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Johnson, does that end your report? Councilor Johnson?
That concludes, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we will now move on to our, well, it's a great segue into our public safety report. Mayor Hopkins and Dr. McCabe.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Public Safety Committee met via Zoom on Saturday, March 27th. Next meeting is Saturday, April 24th. There are no current action items. I will ask if Dr. McCabe wants to add anything before we go into Chief of Police.
No, that what you said is fine.
Okay, thank you, Dr. McCabe. At this time, we will see to Chief. He had a couple of questions. I will say as an overview, managing the pandemic wasn't easy. It was unprecedented around the country and for municipalities. There's increased expenditures in police overtime to police the social unrests that came through our borough. I've spoken a lot about that, so I won't continue to harp on that, but just to the extent that we expended a lot of overtime, unprecedented overtime, but it's not unlike other municipalities which all had to do the same, not just for the unrest, but other COVID-related issues as well. So we spent more money, like every other municipality. And to Ms. Keyes's point, I'll let the chief handle that at this time. Chief Paparo?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'll start off with the part-time officer situation in Manpower. We are currently collecting resumes and so forth to look into the part-time opening positions that we have. We had a few officers that left for full-time employment in other departments. It's one of the issues that you deal with when you do have part-timers. I mean, everybody that is in police work is looking for a full-time position somewhere. We lost 2 officers recently, one to Mississippi and one to Upper Darby Township. But we are currently looking to replace those officers and bolster our numbers there. The process may take anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks to get the candidates in place, get them measured for uniforms, get them sworn in by the mayor, and get them approved by council and so forth. It's a painstakingly process because I want to make sure I get the best people for the position. The civil service is not involved in the selection of the part-time police officers because they're not appointed and they're not provided civil service protections. There's no testing procedure per se for it. They do go through a 10-week field training officer program once they arrive here and begin their part-time employment status with us. So that'll hopefully within the next month and a half, you'll see some newer faces out there, which will be some new part-timers. Part of the traffic enforcement stuff, I don't think I go on a council meeting or a Zoom call or even go on Nextdoor without getting a complaint regarding traffic. Those complaints are rising, obviously, as a result of the restrictions of COVID being lessened and more people going back to work, more people getting out about. And I think as people are doing that, they've been stuck in so long that people are forgetting, honestly, the speed limits and everything else. And the driving is very, very dangerous, I'll put it that way. If I had enough officers to do traffic 24/7, I would do that. But at the end of the day, I have to live with the complement of officers that we have. And one of the things, one of the positive things that have come out with my arrival here, and I think the change in the way the police and community dynamic it works, is there are a lot more calls for service. People are less hesitant to give us a call when they have a problem or they need information or they're reporting a crime or they're just asking for information. And as a result, that tends to take officers away from some of the other duties, which include traffic enforcement. I do periodically put out a marked police car and leave it unmanned in different locations so people think there's a police officer sitting there, which has a deterrent effect on speed. As well as stop sign violations. I do have a speed enforcement sign that I periodically get out as it's when it needs charging. Public Works and Jeff helps me out with that by moving it around town when I need it moved around. And I do have grants that help pay for me to put out officers strictly for traffic enforcement. And I'm not sure if you were on the last call where I actually put out some traffic enforcement along Church Lane in reference to some of the accidents that we keep getting along there related to drunk driving. And as a result, we had 3 drunk driving arrests and numerous red light violations and so forth. And that was just over an 8-hour span for 2 days. So traffic enforcement is an important part of my responsibility. I do take it seriously, and I understand your concerns. I do move officers around based on the complaints that I receive, as well as what I see when I'm driving around, in addition to some of the vehicle stops that I myself am affecting when people are committing motor vehicle violations directly in front of me. But it's something that with the speed bumps that I just got and all the different means that I have to try and resolve it, sometimes through the use of phony things, like I said, by putting a marked car out there with nobody in it, sometimes that has a deterrent effect. I'm never going to have an answer for you that we can do it 24/7. It's just not plausible. But we will, we do put enforcement out in various areas that are problematic, and it does have a reduction. But then again, once we move on, you know, it could be a few days later on that it needs, it recreates itself. But I will put some speed bumps out on Wycombe Avenue, and I will have some additional traffic enforcement done there periodically. And you may as well see a marked police car sit out there that has nobody in it in an effort just to get people to stop at the stop signs. But that's a universal complaint everywhere. I had it even when I was in Upper Darby, it was nonstop. But we'll do the best that we can to ensure that everybody's safe and we're operating within the law. If there's any other questions, I can help, I can answer.
Chief, I have some questions for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how many police officers do we have currently?
Currently, we have 16 police officers, with myself 17. We lost 1 officer earlier this year to Havertown. Next year, I anticipate requesting permission from council to advertise for a test, if not towards the end of this year, to replace at least 1 officer that I know is going to be retiring next year, and then also replace that officer that left earlier this year. So I'll be looking for at least 2 officers replacements for next year.
Okay. And so that was my first question. The second one is I've been getting complaints about it being less police present. So I wanted you to address that. Also, the other question is I would like you to elaborate on the shootings that's been going on in the borough. And lastly, there's a nuisance complaint and have been for, I guess, I don't know, I guess a few weeks or a couple of months, I don't know. But in reference to the social space and the other facility across the street, when they're having parties and stuff, the people are lingering outside and it's not closing in the timely fashion that it should close. So I was wondering about that. Have you noticed, or could y'all patrol around that area when they're having all of these parties? Because it's a repeated complaint that I'm getting daily as it relates to that.
I'll start off with the police presence. The police presence is predicated basically on what's going on in the borough with the response to calls and or officers that are involved in arrests or investigations. My shortage of part-time officers is directly affecting my ability to put extra officers on the street. And for purposes of strategic planning, I can't get into exactly how many officers are on the street, but I think in the past you saw a lot more because last year with a lot of the civil unrest, I wanted to ensure that you and everyone in Yeadon was safe. So there were a lot more officers visible then because I had more officers on duty just to ensure that we didn't have any issues that some of the surrounding communities were having with the looting and the different crimes that were taking place. And as a result, we knock on wood, got away pretty much scot-free with what was going on around us. So the reduction in the civil unrest has made it easier for me not to have to put so many officers on the street. So that obviously is going to affect with people not seeing as many officers they did, for instance, last year. The social space, it's funny you bring that up because I was actually talking to a couple of my supervisors about a week ago about how the social space was going and things were going overnight along Church Lane. They weren't reporting anything drastic to me because I remember back prior to COVID when the social space was in I guess in high swing business, that there were some complaints that were coming in. For those residents that are calling you or giving you complaints about it, I would ask you to please make sure that they call 911 and report the issues, because again, it comes down to if officers are asked for, if officers are tied up on other calls, it may be some time before they can actually patrol that street to check on what's going on. But if they call 911, know that a police officer will respond. And in cases where we're tied up or we're really busy, that's the beauty of having the mutual aid agreements with, for instance, like Darby Borough, because Darby Borough will send an officer over for us to drive down that street to see if there's any kind of an issue that needs a greater police response. But if they don't call 911, during the time where it's occurring, then it's difficult for me to get the proper information back from my guys that, hey, yeah, it's a problem. Because last year when that happened, I actually stopped and spoke to the manager of the social space to get her to help me with compliance issues and noise violation issues. So please tell them not to hesitate to call 911 so that I can make sure I'm keenly aware of what's going on down there. I think you had one.
Can I want to make sure that the public has a good understanding of the reasons that we're able to use part-time officers. I know that, we've had several conversations regarding the usage of part-time officers. So I wanted to take a moment and let Mr. Gibbs explain the constraints of our being able to use part-time officers, because I don't want anyone to believe that the answer is simply hiring more part-time officers. Mr. Gibbs, would you like to elaborate, please?
Sure. The FOP contract is currently in place and has been in place, Chief, what do you think, 20 years?
At least.
limits the number of part-time officers the borough can use, the number of hours we can use part-time officers. What it requires is that beginning of the year, we do a calculation of how many hours of leave full-time officers are allotted. When that happens, it's called our bank of hours. We can't exceed that bank of hours. So on average, it's about 5,000 hours a year, Chief, do you think?
Say about 5,000 hours, you said? Yeah, that's correct, plus or minus.
So with that bank of time, the chief has to stay within that bank. If we exceed the bank of time, the union can file a grievance, and it could be a situation that's costly for the borough, where we're paying part-time, full-time officers who aren't actually working but are sitting at home. And I think that, just because of pending litigation that I've briefed counsel about, I'll stop there.
So, I mean, could you
So-
just a few reasons that we are able to call in part-time officers? That it's not just to supplement, we can't just do it to supplement a situation or there are specific reasons, right, that we can use.
Not necessarily
illness.
My interpretation of the contract is that there's a number of hours that we can't exceed. We can use officers on that number of hours, but that number of hours, dissipates really quick when people are working 12-hour shifts.
So it was my understanding, and I mean, that it was for illness, trainings, holidays, things like that. That's not what the bank of hours are used for.
That's how we calculate the bank of hours. Because and that's one of the things that we had some discussions about, the chief and I, about what the contract actually says. Because we have this bank of hours process, the chief is limited, can use part-time officers, but it can't exceed that number of hours.
Okay.
So from a budgeting standpoint, what I think that the borough, and Nafis can correct me if I'm wrong, they budget predicated upon the full-time officers not being there, not supplementing. Nafis, am I right about that? Is that how you budget when you budget for the part-timers?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Councilor Jones-Waters, did you have a follow-up question?
I do. So while I'm off that subject, the other question, Chief, was could you elaborate on the shootings in the borough?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had long discussions with the mayor about the different things that are going on in the borough, and I'll be honest with you, I'm very proud of the work that the officers are doing. We've been very, very lucky. Our crime is actually down. We had one recent incident in the Yaden Park. It was not a random incident. The parties involved knew each other. It was a result of a fight that took place at the park during a basketball game with known parties to each other. We've been doing really good. Like, one thing I will say, you may get some people saying that they're not seeing officers visible, but I can tell you that if our visibility was not, if it was lower than, if it was something that was causing me concern, our rise in the crime rate would prove to me that there's an issue. And shootings in Yaden, we had the one that was this past week. And then off the top of my head, we had one other one that was a domestic related incident on I believe it was the 500 block of Cypress. And we actually arrested the subject involved in it. And he actually used his gun to shoot out the windows of his girlfriend's car because he was mad at her. So it was a stupid act, but if there was a shooting concern in the borough, or a concern that I had that the level of violence was rising, I assure you the mayor and I would be having more conversations along with you and all of council, because I would probably be asking the solicitor and all of you guys to come with me to the FOP to say I can't follow this contract that limits my hours with the part-timers. I need to put officers out more often to curb the violence. But officers are making great strides, and they know my standing order is, I want you patrolling. I want you to be visible. And again, I do have I have a lot more unmarked cars out right now in an effort to make it a little bit more scarier for the criminal to do stuff in town. I recently acquired another unmarked vehicle that does not look anything like a police vehicle, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because we're on open public here. But officers are out using it, and it's been a very great asset for us. And I'm very proud of the work these guys are doing. Like I said, my caveat is to make sure that you let everybody know that's calling you to please call 911, because I follow those calls to determine where I need to focus enforcement efforts. So sometimes if there's something else going on someplace else, they may not see me because that street is relatively quiet. Anything else?
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that answered everything.
Hey, Chief, don't you have a tip line also?
We do, and again, I get a lot of stuff through Nextdoor through direct messaging. The only thing I put out for people is sometimes I get complaints through Nextdoor where I tell people don't leave it for me on Nextdoor. Call 911, especially if it's in progress. Because there may be times where I'm not able to get right on Nextdoor and check the messages for a day or so. But we do have a tip line. People have access to my email, but I do get a lot through Nextdoor responses through either direct messages or even to respond to some of the things I put out there.
All right. Thank you very much. I believe our fire chief has their department meeting at the same time we have our caucus meeting, so we allow him to present his report at our legislative session, unless he is on the call. I'm not sure. Okay.
I don't see him, Madam President.
Thank you. So, Mayor, you have emergency management?
I don't know if I don't see Mr. Stokes. I don't know if Mr. Wormley has could fill in anything. Are you still?
No, I have nothing to add as far as emergency management.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, then that ends our report.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to our recreation.
Yes. Good evening, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the team, the solicitor, the mayor, and the president for applying for numerous grants, such as the National Fitness Campaign grant. Getting to Flag Day, as mentioned last month, Flag Day will be virtual. We'll work with the management team to get some information. I also reached out to some groups, and as everybody else, they're concerned about the pandemic. They're also concerned about getting together. And I spoke to one band member. He was more concerned about his fellow members getting the vaccine. So we'll work with that. Dates for proposed events pending the pandemic will probably go on the website next week. And I just want to reemphasize, our main concern is the safety of our residents, our employees who participate in Flag Day, and the participants in Flag Day. Again, depending on the pandemic, we'll have more events. So ends my report, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Francis. So
you.
without further ado, can we entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.